Hey, it's Ed the Talking Head here with some bonus content time. Let's get right into it. Looking at Simeon and Anna this week, mostly Simeon. He says the most. And he uses this word salvation. He's looking at baby Jesus. He's holding him in his arms. And he's so happy, for my eyes have seen your salvation. The word here that for salvation that Simeon uses is most often used in the Septuagint, which is the Greek version of the Hebrew Old Testament. It's most often used to translate Yeshua, which is where we get Joshua, right? And Joshua led the faithful generation into the promised land and to help them to defeat their enemies. In the New Testament, the name Jesus, Yeshua, also takes up this idea that the Lord saves, the Lord defends. And defense is a main idea uh, in this root word. For my eyes have seen your salvation. And he's saying this while he is holding baby Jesus. Pretty cool. Here he is, right here in my arms, my salvation. Now you can dismiss your servant in peace and harmony. My life is fulfilled. I'm holding your salvation in my arms. Isn't that tremendous? What an image there. Well, let's look at some of the other uses, actually, all the other uses of this exact term in the New Testament. Luke chapter 3, verse 6. And all mankind will see God's salvation. Uh, John, we call him John the Baptist. I'd rather call him John the Prophet because that's really what he's all about. John the Prophet here is quoting from Isaiah, voice of one calling in the wilderness and setting up his ministry. I'm this guy calling in the wilderness, making things straight so that all mankind will see God's salvation, referring to Jesus' ministry, right? John the prophet's going to baptize Jesus and send him on his way. He's going to give him a bunch of followers prepared to follow him. Uh, let's keep going. Acts chapter 28, verse 28. Uh, Good old Paul uh, went from persecutor of Christians to one of them to a leader uh, among the Christians, the Christ followers. He has appealed to Caesar, and here in the last chapter of Acts, he's been under house arrest in Rome, and the Roman Jews, the Jewish population in Rome, has come to him, and he's been trying to teach them, hey, here's why I'm here, because I believe that Jesus is the Messiah. I believe he is God's salvation. A few of them are getting it, a lot of them are not. They're not wrapping their head around this idea. And so here's what Paul says in conclusion. Therefore, I want you to know that God's salvation has been sent to the Gentiles. That's us, our progenitors, and they will listen. And the rest of the last chapter of Acts goes on and tells how Paul spoke to the Gentiles, and a lot of them came and believed in God's defense, God's rescue, God's salvation. Well, it gets neater as we keep going. Ephesians 6:17. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. So, a very familiar passage, maybe to a lot of you, maybe not to some of you. Paul likens our spiritual life and our personal integrity to putting on armor to go into battle. And where the battle is not a physical battle on earth, but it's a spiritual battle against the forces of evil that want to knock us down. And as near the end of this, it says, take the helmet of salvation, the the defense of God and what He's done in my favor can defend my mind, my thoughts, my will, if I put that on purpose. And I have to say, especially this time of year when the daylight gets short, I need to do that. My thoughts are not always where they can be, where they should be. They're not healthy. And there are times, there are days that I just have to lean back in the Lord and say, Lord, I don't know about these other thoughts going through my head. I know they're not healthy, but I know I am saved and rescued by you and by what you have done. And I'm just going to put that on today and ask you to defend my mind from these thoughts so they'll go away. Personal confession. Titus chapter 2, verse 11. For the grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all people. The grace of God, the love of God acted out, if you will. God looking at these people and saying, I want to show people how much I love them and what love means. And that couldn't happen until Eve and Adam stepped over the line and distrusted God and said, you're holding out on us, God. We're going to take this fruit and find out what it's all about. When that happened, when that distrust came in, it would be reasonable for God to stop loving us human beings. But He didn't. In fact, while we were still sinners, Christ came for us. Think about this. He came as a baby, poopy diapers, crying, learning how to talk, learning how to walk, going through puberty. Come on, I would have skipped that part. Zits, awkwardness, voice cracking, all of the stuff that goes with puberty. Skip all that, man. Skip it. No, he went through it. Not only that, it, it appears he went through the death of his dad because Joseph is not around uh, in the stories of his ministry. He went through grief. He went through loss. He went through a trial where he was unjustly accused and convicted, and he allowed himself to be tortured to death. That wouldn't have made any sense in the Garden of Eden. But in our world today, our fallen world, we can look at that and say, that's crazy. Why would God do that? I mean, maybe I would do that for someone I really, 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 really cared about, but could I go through a trial and keep my mouth shut? I don't even know. I don't think so. But God did all of that because He wants us to know what love is and what it's all about. For the grace of God that brings salvation, the love of God acted out that brings salvation, has appeared to all people. How cool is that? Verse 12, which I didn't include, and it teaches us to say no to ungodliness and all worldly passion. We can be so captured by the love of God, the grace of God that brings salvation, that we can learn to live in relationship with Him, even if that means saying no to other stuff, because we know the depth of His love. And where did it all start? It all started with the little baby, the little bitty baby that Simeon is holding and looking at and saying, "My eyes have seen your salvation." May the Lord add his blessing to this reading of his word.